Welcome to Dashboard Jesus, the podcast where faith meets the fast lane. Whether you're cruising through calm or navigating life's hairpin turns, we're here to help keep your eyes on the road and your heart grounded in God's Word. So buckle up. It's time to ride with a biblical perspective on the journey of life. Here's your host, Peter Heck.
Welcome again to the Dashboard Jesus podcast. This is your host, Peter Heck. Great to have you with us. It has been a week now, and I need to maybe apologize isn't the right word, but I really felt like last week's podcast, Terror Comes to Utah, is what I called it, that I didn't even want to publish it. I didn't want to publish it, but I didn't want to look like I wasn't producing content, but I couldn't do what I had planned on doing, what I was prepared to do. And so I basically gave you a stream of consciousness, and I will be the first. I will readily admit to you that my stream of consciousness a week ago was extraordinarily disturbed, extraordinarily unsettled, and frankly horrified is the only word that I can use for it. And when I say that, I need you to understand there have been a lot of individuals and a lot of figures in the political realm that have meant a lot more to me, that have been that I've followed a lot closer, that I knew a lot better than Charlie Kirk. I'm not saying that because I had anything against Charlie Kirk. He just came after, like he became a big thing after God had kind of steered my path away from the political as much. Like if Charlie Kirk would have been a thing when I was on the radio, I truly think that he would have been one of my favorite figures in my entire life. I think that I would have thought very highly of him and really done all I could to promote his work and all of those things. I really do, because that's back when I was eating and drinking and I would say idolizing politics and the political realm. And maybe not when Kirk first started. I do appreciate the fact that I've read some things where he was kind of a goober when he first started, kind of weird. And then he grew into his own skin and learned to laugh at himself, and that made his gooberishness endearing, and then it kind of fell off. He really wasn't much of a goober anymore. I mean, people liked him, and people gravitated towards him. It's just that what really threw me last week was how much it bothered me. And I know part of it was because I inadvertently saw the video. And I knew that his family was there and would have seen that. And it was very unsettling to me, and it was very disturbing to me. But I went ahead and tried to do a podcast, and I don't think it came off very well. I mean, I didn't get complaints or anything like that, but I could not focus at all. Then, once the dust had settled a little bit, I mean, obviously the emotion is still raw, but I was able to write that from the dashboard commentary, and I actually wrote it on Thursday and sent it out early because I didn't want to wait until Friday, because I thought it was important that we all guard our hearts. And that's what I learned from my podcast. That when I was just giving the stream of consciousness, there was an extraordinarily profound element in me that was unsettled, that was discouraged, that was, I don't want to even use the word fear. It wasn't fear, it was more grief. That's why I used that C.S. Lewis quote last week. And so I realized the vulnerable state, that if my heart is that way, what about all the people? There's a new teacher at the school where I am, and he and I texted a little bit. He grew up with Charlie Kirk. Like, Charlie Kirk was a big thing when he was in college, because he's just right out of college now. And so he's seen like all of the videos, and he's been very, very connected to the life and the ministry, if you want to call it that, of Charlie Kirk. And so I'm thinking, if I'm one of them, I'm going to be even more susceptible to Satan's work on our hearts, whether that's discouragement, whether that is fear, whether that is vengeance. And so I wanted to share some thoughts, and I wanted to get it out. And that's why I wrote that from the dashboard last week, and I've left it up intentionally on Facebook as my my top story or top post, and I haven't posted anything else because I wanted that to gain the traction and get the attention, because I thought it was important in this moment, regardless of where people are on all of this, politically and all of that. Hopefully we're all on the same page, and I know we're not, but we should be all on the same page of expressing horror at what took place. Let me, this is going to seem like I'm totally switching gears, and I'm not. But I want to lead into what I'm getting at in this episode today. Tim Tebow, former NFL player, college football icon at the University of Florida. He would wear under his eyes little black stickers or black paint with Philippians 4:13. Do you know what Philippians 4:13 is? This is and you will when you hear it, even if you don't know it off the top of your head. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that's, people see that, they look it up, and they're like, oh, yeah. And we take that verse. It's not just Tim Tebow, but how do we take that verse? We take that verse to mean we can go out there and we can win this game because Christ is strengthening us. We can go out there and we can achieve our dreams and we can build that business because Christ is strengthening us. And listen, do I obviously believe that all of our successes and all the blessing in our life is tied back to God's blessing? Of course. But that verse of Philippians 4:13, when you back up and you look at what the Apostle Paul is writing under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, he's talking about enduring hardship, being content in poverty or wealth. I can endure any situation. I can handle anything, no matter what the world throws at me, because it is Christ who gives me strength. But we take this line and we use it for our own purposes. Of course, that isn't just the Bible. I used to do a lot of speaking engagements in churches and talking about cultural issues and all of those things. And in several presentations, I would quote the atheist German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. And I would quote Nietzsche's famous line, "God is dead." He writes that, God is dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? And I would use that in making my case and driving to a point that God isn't really dead, and that and I would build it from there. But when you read the full context of what Nietzsche is writing, he actually wasn't gloating over the death of God. Even as an atheist philosopher, he wasn't saying this is a good thing. He was actually acknowledging that it's not good when man and his belief in God dies. Much like you've got profound atheists like Bill Maher and Richard Dawkins and others in our culture and in Western society today who are starting to acknowledge it's not really a good thing if if people don't believe in God, because that's kind of what provides the foundation for their morality. Nietzsche wasn't gloating over the death of God. He was lamenting the collapse of the moral order in Europe, because once belief in God died, people abandoned any sense of moral authority. Nietzsche was writing about the cultural vacuum that had been left behind. What are we going to fill it with? Whose word is going to determine what's right and wrong and good and bad and true and false? You see, without that moral authority of God, we don't have one. And we're all left to our own devices. That isn't going to end well. So I look back and think, man, I actually should have used Nietzsche's quote as a testament to the reality of what happens when we abandon God as the moral center of the universe. But sometimes when you clip a quote to use it for your own purposes, you actually misrepresent, whether it's the Bible, whether it's Friedrich Nietzsche, whether it's Ronald Reagan, whether it's Martin Luther King Jr., or whether it's Charlie Kirk. I acknowledged to you earlier that I was not a huge follower of Charlie Kirk. I would see video clips from time to time, and I would see clips of speeches from time to time. But the amount of my foot that is dipped in the waters of conservative politics is less foot than ever before. Not because my political views have changed. It's just what I elevate and what I focus and what I spend my time on is not that realm. And so even though I obviously was familiar with Charlie Kirk, a lot of these quotes that I'm seeing thrown all over social media, that I'm hearing people recite, and when I say people, I'll hear students talking about it and say, well, yeah, no, horrible that he died. But this guy did say... And you've heard a bunch of them. You've heard ones like that Charlie Kirk said. My wife has a friend from high school who is very left when it comes to politics, very progressive in politics. I don't know about faith. I honestly just don't know. But has posted a bunch of these circulated memes and graphics and all of that just give this laundry list of stuff that Charlie Kirk actually believed and why, it's not really bad that has been silenced, even though, of course, we don't want anybody to be murdered. And you'll see these quotes like Charlie Kirk said, "We made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. Really? Charlie Kirk was opposed to civil rights? And here's another one. "I can't stand the word empathy." That's a Charlie Kirk quote. Really? He doesn't have empathy for other people? Charlie Kirk quote. "I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified." That seems pretty racist to say. Charlie Kirk wanted gay people. He wanted gay people to die. He believed that they should be subject to the death penalty. Really? That seems pretty bigoted too. How about this one? The one that's probably the most famous. It's circled and it's cycled around like crazy right now. Charlie Kirk said, "I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights." These are the quotes that are circulating around, and you just look at them and you think, and somebody like myself, and probably many of you that are not or were not faithful Kirkites, we didn't follow. We look at that and we say, okay, this isn't good. That's not stuff that I would really be on board with. Let me encourage you to do what I have done in the past several days. Don't take it at face value, but see for yourself what was really said. Yes, Charlie Kirk did say that he can't stand the word empathy. Let me read you the full quote. Quote, "I can't stand the word empathy. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term, and it does a lot of damage. Sympathy is a better word, because empathy means you are actually feeling what another person felt, and no one can feel what another person feels." So there's the full quote. Is Charlie Kirk saying we should not be empathetic people? We shouldn't care about people? Actually, no. He's saying we should recognize that we cannot actually feel what another person feels, so we sympathize with them. We can feel their hurt, and we can be there for them, but we shouldn't insult them by suggesting that we know, we may have lost a loved one just like they lost a loved one. So we can sympathize with them, but since we didn't have the exact kind of relationship and we didn't have the exact kind of experiences that this person did with the person that they lost, then we can't empathize. It's a New Age term. That's what Kirk is saying. Now listen, you can disagree with that and you can say, no, I see the distinction. I think it's okay to say that. That's fine. But what you have to acknowledge is Kirk isn't saying we don't feel bad for people in bad situations. He's not heartless. Or how about this other one that I just mentioned? It is true. Charlie Kirk said, quote, I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Now here is the full quote of what he said. He was discussing diversity, equity, inclusion, affirmative action. And the person, he says initially, I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. And the person that he's interviewing with says, but you wouldn't have done that before. Before DEI, before affirmative action, which is what Kirk is actually arguing against, then you would know if there's a black pilot, that black pilot is there because he was qualified and he had graduated from his courses and his training just like everybody else, and he wasn't given preferential treatment. And Kirk responds and says, you see, that's not an immediate, that's not who I am. That's not what I believe. It also creates unhealthy thinking patterns. I don't want to think that way, and no one should. Later, addressing that same quote, here's what he said. I was trying to be very vulnerable with the audience, and that DEI invites unwholesome thinking. I was saying in the clip, that's not who I am. That's not what I believe. But what it does is it makes us worse versions of ourselves, Megan. That's the whole point of what I was saying, is that I now look at everything through a hyper-racialized diversity quota lens because of their massive insistence to try to hit these ridiculous racial hiring quotas. Of course, I believe anybody of any skin color can become a qualified pilot. Can I tell you, that is exactly the argument, and you may not be aware of this, but that is the exact argument that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who is black, that's exactly why he is vehemently opposed to all forms of diversity, equity, and inclusion and affirmative action. He actually writes about it in his biography, if you ever read that biography, that despite him getting top marks at Yale, he would go to interview at the top law firms and they just assumed he was an affirmative action entrant, an affirmative action scholar. And he put it in his biography, his diploma was worth the price sticker on the back of the frame because nobody believed he'd actually earned it. And why? Because of affirmative action and DEI. That's what Charlie Kirk was opposing. But what about that big one, about the gun rights? That we should just accept some gun deaths every year. And that one, of course, since Charlie Kirk was killed by a rifle, that one has been circulated around and people have crowed about it. What was he actually saying? And what about the Civil Rights Act? I've got audio for you. I want you to hear it when we come back right after this.
Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners, Ltd., and ETFs distributed by Foreside Fund Services, LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance, and each experience will differ.
Back here on Dashboard Jesus, the Dashboard Jesus podcast. Make sure you're emailing me, peter@peterheck.com. That is peter@peterheck.com. Would love to hear from you. Also, of course, make sure you're checking our website. By the way, that Dashboard Jesus Daily, we have not forgotten. This is what I did not know, because it's the first time I've done anything like this. It takes a while to get approval to be able to text a bunch of people. Who knew? You get one of those mass texting agencies that you hire and that you contract with, and they want to make sure that you're not going to be spamming a bunch of people's phones. Almost like I can respect that. But it just takes time to get the approval, so as soon as we have it, then we're going to get started with it. And I'm, like I've said before, I'm very excited about it. Okay, Charlie Kirk. What did the guy really believe? Yes, it is true that Charlie Kirk said we made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. Let me play for you what Charlie Kirk said with regard to that. Listen to this.
Yeah, so the parts of the Civil Rights Act were great, but the way it's now being implemented to force men in female bathrooms to push forward of the trans agenda, the intent of the Civil Rights Act is way beyond what it was originally authored for.
But the intent specifically originally was to...
Well, that's interesting. So the intent and the law are two different things. So the intent was noble, which was to say that no American can be not allowed into a place of business based on the color of their skin or their ethnic heritage. Totally agreement with that. Totally agreement with that. Totally agreement with that. That's not what the law only did. It created a massive anti-racist DEI army that then gave us affirmative action. For example, recently Merrick Garland sued using the Civil Rights Act, saying that we cannot have voter ID in certain states because it's a violation of the Civil Rights Act. So basically what the Civil Rights Act did is that it went beyond disparate impact and then went to disparate effect. In the sense where if black Americans are not doing as well as white Americans in a certain category, you can now use the Civil Rights Act and say that's a violation of the Civil Rights Act, even though there might be other contributing factors. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's too broad, too wide, and it's now doing a lot of damage to the country. It's being used well beyond its original intent.
In other words, and he said this in other places as well, Civil Rights Act should simply be a one-page law that says you can't discriminate against somebody on the basis of skin color. Because that's obviously something we all agree on. But now, the way they wrote the Civil Rights Act of 1964, somebody can claim, some dude can claim that they're a woman, and then they can use the Civil Rights Act to be able to play on the women's volleyball team at a university. That's where the Civil Rights Act failed us. That's what Charlie Kirk was saying. Not that he didn't believe that black people should have civil rights. What about the big one, though? What about that quote where Charlie Kirk said, quote, "I think it's worth a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights." That's callousness, isn't it? That's callousness towards people who have lost their lives because of guns. And now he has lost his life because of guns, and that's his comeuppance, right? Well, that's the way it's being used online. Can I read you the full quote? And this is a full quote. I wanted to make sure I got the full context. So I dug and I found it. This is what Charlie Kirk actually said in that discussion. Take off your inflamed, politicized hat and listen to the logic, which you may not agree with. But see if this sounds like the outrageous statement it's made out to be. Charlie Kirk's full quote. Quote, "Yeah, it's a great question, thank you. So I'm a big Second Amendment fan, but I think most politicians are cowards when it comes to defending why we have a Second Amendment. This is why I would not be a good politician, or maybe I would, I don't know, because I actually speak my mind. The Second Amendment is not about hunting. I love hunting. The Second Amendment is not even about personal defense. That is important. The Second Amendment is there, God forbid, so that you can defend yourself against a tyrannical government. And if that talk scares you, wow, that's radical, Charlie. I don't know about that. Well, then you have not really read any of the literature of our founding fathers. Number two, you've not read any 20th century history. You're just living in Narnia. By the way, if you're actually living in Narnia, you would be wiser than wherever you're living because C.S. Lewis was really smart. So I don't know what alternative universe you're living in. You just don't want to face reality that governments tend to get tyrannical, and that if people need an ability to protect themselves and their communities and their families. Now, we must also be real. This is still the quote. We must be honest with the population. Now, here's where the line comes in. Having an armed citizenry comes with a price, and that is part of liberty. Driving comes with a price. 50,000. 50,000. 50,000 people die on the road every year. That's a price. You get rid of driving, you'd have 50,000 less auto fatalities. But we have decided that the benefit of driving, speed, accessibility, mobility, having products, services, is worth the cost of 50,000 people dying on the road. So we need to be very clear that you're not going to get gun deaths to zero. It will not happen. You could significantly reduce them through having more fathers in the home, by having more armed guards in front of schools. We should have an honest and clear reductionist view of gun violence, but we should not have a utopian one. You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. Nobody talks like this. They live in a complete alternative universe. So then, how do you reduce? Very simple. People say, Charlie, how do you stop school shootings? I don't know. How did we stop shootings at baseball games? Because we have armed guards outside of baseball games. That's why. How do we stop all the shootings at airports? We have armed guards outside of the airports. How do we stop shootings at banks? We have armed guards outside of banks. How do we stop all the shootings at gun shows? Notice there's not a lot of mass shootings at gun shows. There's all these guns, but everyone's armed. If our money and our sporting events and our airplanes have armed guards, why don't our children? End quote. Now, again, you can disagree with what he's saying, but it's not a callous argument. Any more than when you say, I don't want to get rid of automobiles, I would say to you, well, then you don't care about the 50,000 people that die on the road, do you? Well, that's not true. You do. And you want to make driving safer, but you are willing to exchange the loss of life that there's going to be if you have automobiles for the freedom and the blessings that come from the ability of all of us to drive. And what Kirk was saying was, if you have an armed citizenry, you're not going to eliminate gun deaths. Is it worth it? Yes, you can do things to greatly limit the amount of gun deaths, and he listed off a bunch of reasons why. But the point that he's making is there's an exchange. There's always an exchange when it comes to liberty. Is 50,000, what if the person that makes the argument, what if you tell me, yeah, I think 50,000 deaths a year is a reasonable trade-off. It's unfortunate, but it's a reasonable trade-off for the ability of the population to drive. And then tomorrow you're killed in an automobile accident. Is it fair for me to gloat? Is it responsible or reasonable? Is it moral or even logical for me to gloat and say, well, you got what was coming to you? Of course not. And yet that's where we are right now. That's the petulance of so many minds that are either unwilling or unable to use critical thinking skills. Everything is hyper politicized, and everybody has all of these immediate thoughts that they conjure up in their mind about another person because of what they've heard or what's been posted about them or what they saw on a meme. And we just don't engage people's thoughts anymore. And it's tragic. I'd be interested to know your thoughts. Peter@peterheck.com. That is Peter@peterheck.com on this or others. I guess I need to give you one more. Author Stephen King, the horror writer, had posted online that Charlie Kirk had advocated stoning gays to death. Just saying. Somebody responded to him with the actual Charlie Kirk quote. I believe marriage is one man, one woman. Also, gay people should be welcome in the conservative movement. As Christians, we are called to love everyone. I will always stand against people who wish to establish their own personal values as a reason to kick others out of our movement. Stephen King later deleted the tweet and apologized. You know why he posted it? Why he said that? Same reason that Jenny's friend posted it. Because somebody that they listen to, somebody that they trust, posted it. Because somebody that they listen to or somebody that they trust had posted it. Because somebody that they listen to or that they trust had made it up or had misinterpreted the quote and twisted it to put it onto a meme or a graphic, and then it began its circulation. Stephen King had no idea what Charlie Kirk actually said. That's what I'm talking about. The fast food culture, the iPad culture, the social media culture. We don't think anymore. And I think we owe it to each other to do better than that. Your thoughts welcome. Peter@peterheck.com. That's Peter@peterheck.com. If you are a paid subscriber in the extra mile today, I've got a piece of video for you that you're going to be shocked with our audience and our community that I'm playing the lead singer from Smashing Pumpkins, the band. You will not believe what he said and how awesome it is. That's coming up for our paid subscribers. Would love to have all of you as part of it, and you can get the extra mile as well as some other unique perks and benefits. Think about it. You can check peterheck.com and click the link, or go to dashboardjesus.net and click join us, or go to the email that you got that had this in it, and you can subscribe there and become part of our paid subscriber community. All right, I went a little long this time because I went short last week and I had a lot to get to, but I appreciate you joining us. We will be with you in your inbox if you're subscribed, free or paid subscriber, with from the Dashboard commentary tomorrow, and then I'll see you next week for another Dashboard Jesus podcast. Adios. Thanks for tuning into the Dashboard Jesus podcast. Honestly, forget just the dashboard. This old car wouldn't be operating if it wasn't for all of these good people and groups that I know personally that have helped sponsor us and keep us going. Friends like Jonathan at Hartman Family Farms, or at my bank, First Farmers Bank and Trust, my lawn care team at Truland Equipment, my insurance company, Norris Insurance, the place where I buy and lease all of my vehicles, McGonigal GM Buick, also J. Watson Creations, the jeweler I use for all the custom pieces that I buy for people that I care about, Stevens Machine, my mechanic at Terrell's Auto Service, my longtime realtor, the Wyman Group, and those fighting for family values in the public square like the Indiana Family Institute and Indiana Right to Life. Thanks to all of those great sponsors.